Welcome back to the Graham Stephan Show, and we got to talk about something that's extremely important today. And that's the fact that I've been mixing protein powder with my coffee for the last few weeks. I ran out of coffee creamer. Funny story, but yeah, coffee creamer was no good. I think it either expired. I didn't have it available. And I thought to myself, how odd would it be to mix protein powder in the coffee? It's got to taste good, right? So I got this like brownie protein powder, and I mixed it in with this. And oh my gosh, it tastes like chocolate milk just mixed with coffee or like espresso. So it's got like a tinge of like coffee flavor to it, but it's protein powder. This thing has 25 grams of protein in it and like 90 something calories. It's absolutely amazing. So I'd highly recommend it. But beyond that though, we also got to talk about something else, and that's the cost of things going up in price. For the last 4 years, everything seems to be costing double, triple, quadruple what it was back in like 2019. And that brings me to this video here. It's by Vox. They titled this, "Why Can't Prices Just Stay the Same?" So with that said, I want to comment on this as soon as you hit the like button and subscribe. As soon as you do that, we'll begin the video. Still haven't done it yet. The video's not... Thank you so much. Now let's begin.
In 2022, much of the world experienced a period of uncommonly high inflation, with the US, UK, and Eurozone all peaking at around 10%, meaning that prices on average were a full 10% higher than 1 year before.
Yeah, it was absolutely awful. And there were a lot of economists out there who thought that that would not be possible, who thought that you could print trillions of dollars into the economy and it wasn't going to cause inflation because everything was shut down. And it really didn't make an immediate effect. So, people kept thinking, well, there's this inflation and everyone's worried. Why aren't prices going up? Well, because everything was shut down. But as soon as things began opening up, as soon as people started spending the money that they were saving in bank accounts, that's when demand went through the roof. But the other issue with that isn't just so much monetary policy, them printing money into the economy. It was also the fact that supply chains were disrupted. And when things are backed up, they can't make enough to satisfy the amount of demand that there used to be. Prices are going to go up as a result. So you had a whole bunch of backlog shipping, you had a lot of demand, you had a lot of extra money in the economy, and that just caused inflation to go through the roof, and for some of the prices that we're seeing today.
But at the same time, if you were to, find yourself reading and watching a ton of inflation-related content, you'll also keep hearing this.
A little inflation is a good thing.
A little inflation is a good thing.
A little inflation now would be a good thing.
Everybody wants a little inflation.
Why? If rising prices hurt seemingly everyone, why can't they just stay the same? Why can't inflation be zero?
Because otherwise, people are going to hoard their money. Look at Japan. Japan is a fantastic example of an economy where it's been so ingrained in their entire culture to save money, don't spend it, hoard cash for a rainy day, and don't spend it. Like, that's their number one thing. So as a result, you have deflation. And when prices begin to come down, consumer psychology says that the customer would then be less likely to spend it because their money is going to go further the next day. So just imagine your money is gaining 10% in value every year. So in essence, everything is getting 10% cheaper the longer you wait to buy it. So unless you need to go and spend money now, it makes sense just to say, oh, you know what, instead of buying the flat screen TV today, I'm going to wait a month. It'll be a little cheaper. Instead of that car I want to buy, I'll wait a month. It'll be a little cheaper. Everything's going down in price. We need some form of spending in the economy to push us forward because we want more people spending, but we don't want people spending too much that it destroys everything. So there's got to be a fine balance, and really for the last few decades, that balance has been 2% inflation, for the most part.
In times when prices are generally rising, people tend to expect them to rise further. And that actually encourages people to spend money now on big durable purchases like cars or appliances in order to avoid having to pay more for the same thing later. Either way, companies make more money, which means more people have jobs, and that means more demand and therefore higher prices. It's okay if prices rise so long as wages rise too. You'll still be able to afford the same goods if your wages keep pace with inflation. Emphasis on the if.
Yeah, but even if wages don't rise at the same pace as inflation, it just is there to help stimulate the economy to a certain degree, to force people to spend some money or invest it, because otherwise their money's losing a little bit of purchasing power every year. So it's just enough to give you a kick in the pants to say, hey, you know what, go and spend that money in the protein powder, mix it in coffee, because it tastes really good, and do that as soon as possible, because if you wait, your money is going to buy you slightly less. So that's all it is. It also helps that it's somewhat predictable, that people know, hey, if I have $100 Next year, it's going to have the purchasing power of 98. The year after that, 96, and so on. So at least it's something you could take into consideration versus 10%, where people just can't adjust to that. They can't keep up, and that's bad.
The government does have tools to combat rising inflation. They usually shift things here by raising interest rates, which makes all borrowing, including credit cards and bank loans, more expensive.
See, one of the ways to combat this, though, is honestly just by saving and investing your money. Because when you invest it in certain assets, for the most part, those assets long-term tend to keep pace with inflation plus some. So you could actually grow your money. And one of the ways that you could do that, by the way, is with a sponsor of the channel, acorns.com/Graham. For those unfamiliar, they're an investing app that you could link your debit or credit cards to. And then what they'll do, which is really cool, is they'll round up your purchases to the nearest dollar and then invest the difference on your behalf. So you don't even have to think about it. Like, just as an example, if you were to invest $5 a day, just $5 a day, and you could basically just automate this entire process over 50 years, if you average an 8% return, that is going to amount to $1.2 million in this hypothetical situation. Just $5 a day. It really goes to show you just how much a small amount goes in the long term. And Acorns also has ways that you could just set up an automatic recurring deposit. You could automate the entire process. You don't even have to think about it. And again, long term, investing tends to be the best way to combat inflation. So if you're interested, check out acorns.com/Graham down below in the description. And even better, if you sign up for this month, they'll give you a $20 bonus when you sign up, which takes like 5 to maybe 8 minutes to do. So if you want to make $20 in 5 to 8 minutes, the link is down below in the description. Enjoy that. Thank you so much. And now let's get back to the video.
But we also have to talk about what happens when prices fall instead of rise. That's called deflation. And falling prices honestly sounds pretty good, but they can also introduce another kind of cycle, a deflationary spiral.
The deflationary spiral. Ooh, so spooky. Honestly, though, for economists, like, this is the worst case scenario. As prices tend to go down, we do think that as consumers, that would be a great thing. Things get less expensive. Our money is now more valuable than it was, a month ago. The issue, though, is that if money is now more valuable, prices drop, how does that affect employment? How does that affect GDP? How does that affect investments? How does that affect hiring? There's so many nuances that come with falling prices like this, where even though it sounds great on the surface, prices fall. At what expense? At what cost? At what damage to the economy? And that's something that you don't really know until it happens.
The last time inflation dipped below 2%, the US brought interest rates all the way down to 0.05%. And after bottoming out for a bit, that seemed to work. Inflation inched back up. But if inflation hadn't come back up, the government would have had limited options. Their rates were already getting almost out zero, and then things could get dicey.
Yeah, so there was actually a brief moment there where the market was pricing in what's called negative interest rates. So basically, the Federal Reserve could lower interest rates so low to the point where they pay you to borrow money. I know it sounds like a really, really, really crazy concept, but just imagine that you could borrow $100,000 and then pay back $98,000 instead of the 100 and profit the difference over a certain length of time. There are some economies out there that have negative interest rates. Their economies are so slow that they have to really incentivize people to spend and borrow money for the sake of growing the economy. And at that point, there was even concerns that if you had a certain amount of money in the bank account, you would actually end up paying the banks instead of them paying you in interest, because interest rates are just so low. They're negative. It's a wild concept. Some countries have done it, some countries have it. I can't imagine the United States going through that. It's possible, and really anything is possible at this point. It's possible to even put protein powder in coffee that I just discovered recently, so that's possible too. But negative interest rates is there. I don't think things are ever going to get that bad to force that to happen, but hey, you know what? Crazier things have occurred.
If inflation sits here, that basic shakiness is constantly at risk of dropping down into the deflation zone, triggering the bad cycle. And the way to prevent that is to have it sit just a little bit higher. So,
A little inflation is usually a good thing.
yeah, that's annoying.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with interest rates, though. My bet, if I'm going to place money on something, and listen, I could be wrong, I think the Federal Reserve is probably going to keep interest rates the exact same for the rest of the year. So right now, the federal funds rate's sitting about 5.25%, 5.25%. And I tend to think, if we see anything, we might see one 25 basis point rate cut at some point this year. That's my guess. Realistically, inflation is having a tricky time coming down. It's hovering around 3.5%, and there's still a lot of demand out there. So I think it's probably going to take way longer than people expect. People are going to have a lot more patience than they wanted to have. The Federal Reserve is probably going to do absolutely nothing. If inflation starts going up, they're going to have no other choice but to raise rates. At this point, it seems like everything is trending either sideways or like slightly down, but more so sideways. So again, I think we're probably going to see more of the same over the next year. Companies are still having strong earnings. Nvidia just crushed it recently. So overall, there's a lot of good things going on in the market. Prices somewhat stabilizing, still high. Let me know what you guys think, though, down below in the comment section. And don't forget, if you want that $20 as a bonus for like 5 to 8 minutes worth of work, check out our sponsor, acorns.com/Graham, or use the link down below in the description. It's a pretty good offer, $20 for like 5 to 8 minutes. Enjoy. Thank you so much, and until next time.